Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. You have a good week.
Awesome. All right. With us now. And Bob, I'm not sure if you're up to speed on the actress. I know you did at least see her photo. I'm a huge fan myself, but I'm a bit of a geek. She came out during my era of, I call it the Nexus years of our childhood, when you're in this range of, where you first get into movies and pop culture and that kind of stuff, the people that you see and do, and those are the ones I think that you have a special affinity for. You become biased pro, and one of those by far is the biggest for me is Tron. I'm a huge Tron fan, even though in hindsight I've had to recognize, and I'm sorry to say to our guest, it's not the greatest film as much as I hold it in regard. I'm personally biased because it came out when I was the perfect target audience. So with us now is Cindy Morgan. Cindy, how are you?
I'm doing great. I was just reposting your post as you were speaking.
Awesome.
So I'm trying. Doing really, really well. And I was listening to your show just briefly there. The Nexus generation, that's a new word for me.
Yeah, that's a term that I used for years to try to help explain that time frame in your life where certain things that come out you hold as a special affinity to. So for us that are my age, the Star Wars film, of course, is the biggest one. I mean, people that experienced it when it came out in theaters.
Absolutely.
They hold it in a special regard.
Yeah, it seems like the world revolves around that one thing. In fact, the rumor on the set when we were doing Tron was that there may or may not have been a pass on Star Wars, and that was what made the interest in the studio for Tron so much greater, because Disney's known as groundbreaking and as just the Tiffany of a lot of certain kind of films, but they had not done adult films.
Yeah.
When I say adult, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Early, please help me.
Right.
But a grown-up film.
Right.
And this is their first grown-up film, and absolutely was very much interested in it. Put a lot into it. It was fun working on the set. Actually, more funny than fun, because we were doing a film. Well, after I did Caddyshack, you know the whole story behind that. I mean, the script was thrown away, and we just showed up on set. This was the entire opposite work process.
Right. Everything was so meticulous and detailed. I want you, when you go into the detail, let me make sure I set the stage, because Bob, you haven't met Cindy and everything, because she had to she blew me away with how she described this. So I want to try to paint the picture, because this is so far ahead of green screens and blue screens, and people now are used to.
I've done green screen before this. Green screen was old news. This is an entirely new process.
Right. So they were still kind of getting used to the concept of acting to like the little styrofoam balls and stuff. I talked to like the people that were in Star Wars and in ships. They had no idea what they were really doing. They were like, okay, you told me to look at the tape. I'm looking at the tape. There's nothing there. And the ship's going to blow up. I'm assuming you're going to make me not look stupid later on. So
we were lucky if we had tape to look at.
Right. So describe the set, though, because you were describing like the tape and all this stuff. And it's like, I can't imagine how hard this would be to work and to be believable.
It was in a sense, because it was very, very tightly choreographed. I was lucky enough to work with the DP earlier this year, and you could just tell that. For example, the film originally, the concept was to shoot everything in white, and he came in and said no, because then you will have to light everything. Everything has to be shot in black and white, but the set was entirely black. So a sound stage is roughly the size of a warehouse that you would see, open, completely empty, nothing there. The floor was black, the ceilings, the walls, everything was completely black. And we'd come into work, and it was again a case of I would get these lines that made pretty much no sense to me. And it was again a case of, okay, throw away the script, shop where we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to be doing. I think the toughest day was I'd show up in the morning, and Steven Lisberger, the writer-director, said, okay, Cindy, Bruce, you're on the Solar Sailor. You're crossing the game sea. Okay, go on up there, go. And that's when I just held up my hand and I said, What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah,
there's
and
no Solar Sailor, there's no game sea, there's no ship, and what do you want us to do?
Right.
And there was a black riser in the middle of this room, and we climbed up there on the stairs, and there was pretty much a black felt cover on a banquet table with nothing there. And we had to see something, because when you lie to the audience, let me tell you, the audience knows. So the reality was found in the other actors' eyes. I would look at Bruce, I would look at Jeff, and that's where we found the story.
And I think
we concentrated on what we were thinking. But
I think that's what still transcends to today, and why it's still such a popular show. Because it's just about the characters. Absolutely.
And you know how when you're telling somebody a story, you look away and you look directly in their eyes, and all of a sudden the story becomes alive. And that's where it was for us. But that was the point where Stephen also said, okay, Cindy, Bruce, and Jeff, you're looking in 3 different places. Could you look at the same one? And that's why I said, could you see that roll of tape that Grip has over there? Could you just drag that on the floor for us so we could all look at that one thing? Because then we will look in the same place, because there wasn't even an eye line.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because you do at least mention the terms, because people, you have to remember too, 1982, they're filming before 1982, so people don't really, even the general public, we have a hard time understanding what RAM and ROM and all these different terminologies that they're using are. So it's that far ahead of its time, and it's really
it was the personal. I was a tech in radio. I was doing morning drive in Chicago, and so I was running my own board. I was an FCC licensed sound engineer who flipped on the tower at the Hancock Center.
That's how you knew how to fly the ship.
Yeah, exactly, but that has nothing to do with flying a ship. And personal computers were not in use. My dad had one, and I thought it was a toy. Nobody really knew where this was going.
Right. Well, let's go back, because I think people we have to know and piece this together too. Because she is, I'm talking to Cindy Morgan, and let's talk about Caddyshack, because Caddyshack's where it began. We'll go back a little bit, because when you guys were on Caddyshack, we have to rewind a little bit and reset the table, because Ted Knight is the main established actor, and Rodney Dangerfield, of course, had this huge cult comedy following.
But this was his first film.
This is his first motion picture, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Lay the landscape of what it was like to work and the antics that surrounded this production.
It was Animal House on a golf course, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
It was exactly that. 4 of the funniest men on the planet coming from, well, Chevy Chase and Bill Murray came from SNL, so they had the same sort of up-to-date comedy improvisational training. But Ted Knight goes by the script, and he's used to being the funny guy. Suddenly, he's playing straight man to Rodney Dangerfield, who had never done a film before, who had his own way of showing up on the set and just saying whatever the heck popped into his head. And luckily, the camera followed the action. These guys were the director and the people behind would follow where the comedy was going. So the entire script, the original story was about the caddies, was pretty much thrown away. I mean, it got to the point where again, coming from a background where in broadcasting, everything is run by the clock, on the dot. You don't miss a station ID. You don't miss anything. Everything is done specifically. And I showed up on the set, and nobody cared. The call sheet really didn't apply. The script really didn't apply. It was, you show up, you see where the action is, you see where the camera is, and you go to work. And again, the broadcast training had a lot to do with that, because you show up in the morning. How many things aren't where they're supposed to be?
Oh, yeah, it's every single show, every single day. Yeah, it's just how things are. So let's lay the 4 of them out here real quick. Ted Knight, Rodney, Bill, Chevy. What can you say about each one of them? I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, nor am I trying to glorify them. So kind of give people an honest opinion of what it was like.
Completely different ways of approach. Well, Bill and Chevy were more the same.
Yeah, because they had the whole skit comedy thing down to a science. I mean, that was their end.
Sure. And when I found out, when I was going to work with them, this is just what I personally do. When I find out I'm going to work with somebody, I don't watch their work, because I don't want to show up on the set and be intimidated and goofy. I just want to react immediately in the moment. So Chevy and I had a lot of scenes together. I did my best work with Chevy, and Chevy is brilliant in improv. And Chevy is a handful. He's bright, he's fast, he's quick, he can set up a scene, and he can make or break the action. But if he's breaking the action, or there was a scene when we did the love scene, for example. Mm-hmm. We were fighting. We weren't even speaking to each other. Wow. The love scene, the oil massage scene.
Yeah.
I had said something. He had said something. No, actually, he said something, and I said something back. And this one, and somebody walked, and somebody didn't apologize. And after standoff, eventually he came back to set, and they said, okay. He said, I'm going to shoot 2 masters. Now look at my eyes during this scene. You can, when that bottle of oil hits my back. Certainly that wasn't in the script because that's a one-take thing. But I wasn't going anywhere. It made for a better dynamic because love and hate are a lot closer than you think.
Oh yeah,
and passion reads passion, and that's what happened.
The timeline here is really fantastic, and I do want you to touch on just so people do understand the backstory here because things didn't go real well.
Bill
with
had just seen each other. There was a scuffle on the set of SNL. The rumor was somebody had thrown a punch. There was a scuffle, and they hadn't seen each other since then.
The key aspect here, I think, because I think we would all know Cindy Morgan a little bit differently because I know there was at least a little bit of a backstory I'd like you to touch on with
which backstory?
Should have said introducing Cindy Morgan as Lacey Underall. Right. And that didn't exactly make it to the poster, make it to the promotion. And
I had my contract said, and introducing Cindy Morgan as Lacey Underall, and paid ads and billing were part of my deal because, well, first of all, not because I was a well-known film actress at the time. It was more because I was the female lead. And I got to the set, and pretty much the second setup, the first setup was the high dive. Mm-hmm. I can't dive. Contact lenses were hard plastic at that time, so to climb that board, I had to take those lenses out because they would have shot to the back of my head when I hit the water, and a doctor would be taking them out. So I had to climb that board legally blind. I can't dive. I kind of can swim, and I climbed the board blind and did that jump so they could cut to the diver. They didn't make it easy. That was scene 1. Scene 2 was the nude scene, which had been discussed in detail ahead of time. When on the biography channel, Harold Ramis said, I went into a room and I came out crying. There's no crying on the set of Caddyshack. You start crying, you might as well go home. They'll eat you alive.
I was going to say, that wasn't what you described to me when we talked about this.
I had discussed it ahead of time in specifics as to the core demographic being 18 to 25 male. It was going to be X kind of a scene, and that was it. I show up on the set. The second setup was the nude scene, and I get a call from John Peters saying that the Playboy photographer was showing up the next day. And I said, well, thank you for the compliment, but I can't do it. I'm the Irish Spring Girl at the time, and I know damn well, and you're in broadcasting, so you know what I'm talking about, when there's a conflict that could screw something up. And I said, I can't do it. And he said, you don't understand. I'm sending him. And I called my agent back in L.A. because we shot in Florida, and I said, help me. And my agent said, honey, you're not a doe-eyed girl from the Midwest. Handle it. So I handled it, but I came back and fired him. But in the meantime, I went to the set, and I said, sorry, can't do it. And there was a big standoff. Peters called me and told me I was blanked in this business. I would never blanking work again. And I said, so be it. But now I'm clearing the set because I knew who belonged there. And it was ridiculous. And if I was going to get my job done and done right, they were going to clear that set. Or I said, go ahead. I want to see 4 people. I need that actor. I need the focus puller because they had the older cameras. I need that director of photography running camera, and I need the director. Until then, I got all day. Take your time.
Wow. Awesome.
And there were I learned a lot of new words that day. Let me just put it that way. But again, it was a favor because, coming from a broadcast background, you're behind a microphone. The last thing you expect to see is yourself nude on camera. But that was the job. That's what I was going to do. So I was kind of nervous going into it. But when you back somebody into a corner and they come out swinging, you're not nervous anymore. And it was probably the biggest favor they could have done because that's the day Lacey Underall was born. So a take-charge female who's had no problem doing her job and had no problem backing people off. So in a sense, I should write John Peters a thank you note.
Absolutely. We had a call and a request to have Bill play your song. So, Bill?
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me.
Cindy, I don't know how many interviews that this comes up in conversation, but how much?
It's a great song. Go ahead.
How much did Chevy really doing, not doing, scripted, not? Because I know Chevy Chase. He just does it at.
That wasn't rehearsed. That wasn't even discussed ahead of time. I was getting my makeup touched up because it was Florida. It's about okay, no exaggeration. It had to be like 100 degrees in there with those giant Klieg lights we had at the time.
Right.
They're touching up the makeup. And Harold Ramis says, "Come over here and sit down." We're in a house. I said, "Why?" He said, "Just come over here and sit down and say, 'Sing me a love song.'" I said, "Fine. Sing me a love song." Again, watch my eyes. This is not acting. This is the real. And Chevy snorts the salt, throws the tequila over his shoulder, and launches into "I Was Born to Love You." And I look at him, and you can see it register. We're doing a damn scene, aren't we? And out of the corner of my right eye, I see the camera light on. I went, "You son of a..." Okay, yep. I'll play. And I took the tequila, took a shot. It was tequila. And I had a wad of gum in my mouth, and I blew a bubble in his face, and that was a one-take wonder.
That's a fantastic story. Fantastic.
That was lucky. We were struck by comedy lightning. None of these things, only under the best circumstances do these things work. And we had the best circumstances.
And I think that really is the story with some of the backstory. Why I love talking to you guys, because when you start to peel the onion back and you start to see the magic, and that was like, Jaws is probably the most famous one, right? Had the shark actually worked, would Steven Spielberg
right.
have the career he has? Because that's the magic that was happening behind the scene. Now, obviously,
that's the magic. You're
right, because of the biography channels and stuff like that, we all know the story, and to me, it makes it more magical. But let me just squeeze that in, because you did get a chance. I would like you to share with people, because you actually had an episode. I love the episode of the Amazing Stories.
Amazing Stories, yeah,
it's fantastic. Tell me about Steven. He was intricately involved with development of the show, but I don't think he really worked with you personally on the episode.
Irvin Kershner, the director, who did wasn't it Return of the Jedi? It's
Return of the Jedi. That's where I was going. So, but you did work with the Return of the Jedi director. So tell us about this experience, because he's amazing,
nice, right? Probably one of the few people in the world who actually directed me, because usually I show up, I've got a general idea of what I'm going to do, and rarely does anybody say anything more than "your mark is over here." You better come in loaded and ready to do your job. Under all circumstances, and I'd never get cast to play the classic, and you don't really see this anymore, but the classic dumb blonde character. I would get called in, and they would look at me and they said, "Yeah, thanks, go home." And I came in and Mr. Kershner was describing the character, and I looked at him and I said, "What?" And he said, "Stop, don't move." And he took a Polaroid of me going, "What?" And that was how I got cast to play this character. And more channeling Judy Holliday than anything else. I mean, I wasn't thinking Judy Holliday, but that, you know who she is, the actress from the 40s?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Born Yesterday. Wasn't she famous for it? It wasn't that she was dumb. She was not at all. You don't play a negative. You play something. She was thinking very clearly. She was just thinking something else.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what this character was. The character in Amazing Stories. Amazing Stories, for those who don't know, was a kind of a short-lived series Steven Spielberg did that was wonderfully done. Beautiful little tiny stories, completely different from everything else.
Yeah, a sci-fi, kind of a sci-fi twisted Twilight Zone without anything creepy.
Twilight Zone, exactly. I was thinking.
Yeah, not really creepy, but just it's that kind of spin on things.
It was, and in this particular episode, it was called Hell to Pay, and the reason Mr. Kershner was called in to direct is because it was a story. There's going to be hell to pay for that expression.
Yep.
Well, in this case, Hell to Pay was about a toupee from hell.
Yeah, the hell toupee.
And apparently Mr. Spielberg had a thing about lawyers, because in the storyline, the toupee would jump on bald men's heads and get them to go kill lawyers.
Right. Well, you know what, Cindy? It's been such a great chance to talk to you. I wish we had more time.
We're running
we could talk about Falcon Crest, all these great little stories that we can peel back, and we'll have to figure out a way to schedule you to come back in, and we'll talk about some of the backstory of some of these shows, because that to me is it's just magic. We're putting magic in the can and creating a time capsule for people that are 10, 20 years from now who will wonder what it was really like on these sets of these shows and stuff like that.
But that's why they hold up over time.
Absolutely.
There was movie magic.
Fantastic. If you get a chance to catch up with Cindy at one of the conventions, you can go to her website. We have a link to her website, see some of the great photos and some of the great opportunities that she has. And she's just exactly like she sounds, folks. She's exactly like this in real life. She's so easy to talk to. It's been a great experience.
Well, you're
talking
very
to her.
Sweet, and Thank you very much, and we'll do it again.
Awesome. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
You know, the best part of
Good interview, bro.
the best part about meeting her.